welcome back to another episode of Bird Brain Q&A, where no bird question is too flighty to ask. I am your co-host, Pam Moore.
And I am Lauren Benedict, your other co-host. I'm an ornithologist and ready to answer questions about birds. And Pam, I think this is our 8th episode that we're doing today.
Amazing. This is the 8th episode where Lauren shows just how much she loves birds, knows about birds, and is enthusiastic about birds, and where I'll show how much I don't know about birds because my role here is, in case you haven't joined us before, I am the question asker in chief. I know very little about birds, but being firmly middle-aged, it is my time of life to embrace birds, all things birds.
I think a lot of us reach that time where we realize, oh, now's when I become a birder. So if you're feeling that, join us.
Yep. I got a couple of whiskers. I got like tweezers in every room, reading glasses, and binoculars.
Perfect. You're ready.
All right, so today we noticed a trend. It seems to be Man Day on the Bird podcast because all of our questions came from male listeners, and I'm excited to dive into these.
Yeah, me too. And I think a lot of our questions on previous episodes have been from female listeners. So, we're spreading the love.
I love it. Well, the first one comes from Bill. I wouldn't have even thought of this one. I just love the creativity that our listeners are showing. Bill asks, what colors can birds see?
Birds can see pretty much all the colors that you and I can see, plus more.
Okay.
They have really good vision abilities, and they have they can sense more sort of fine scale differentiation between colors, and they can see a broader range of colors because a lot of birds can see in the ultraviolet.
Wow.
You've probably heard that in your eyes you have rods and you have cones. Rods are the ones that are more light sensitive. They're better in low light, but they're mostly, kind of black and white vision. Cones are the ones that give you color vision. Birds, what makes birds really special or different from humans is that they have 4 different types of cones. We only have 3 different types of cones. So we're a little more restricted in the colors that we can see. And that extra cone gives them the ability to see in the ultraviolet. And it means that they probably have the ability to perceive the really small differences between colors that we sometimes can't see because we're trying to cover the range of visual light with only 3 sensors instead of 4.
Wow. Are birds born with their sight capabilities or do they develop over time?
That is a great question. I mean, certainly a lot of birds are born and their eyes aren't even open if they're born really early. So there are some birds that in the nest, they hatch from the egg and they're naked and their eyes are closed and they're basically nothing but a bag of skin that has guts and a beak and can be fed. And eventually their eyes open. I don't know how developed they are, though. That's a really great question. I will have to get back and do some more reading, and then I can tell you in the future.
Okay. My mind is really blown though about the idea that like they can perceive colors that we cannot. It never occurred to me that there's like some spectrum that is unavailable to us.
Oh, yeah. They probably, when they look at the world, see things very differently than we do. We know, for example, that some birds have plumage on their feathers that is ultraviolet in coloration. So there are birds that to us might look like they're just white or blue, but to another bird look like they're showing multiple colors, including this really cool ultraviolet. And then there are things like hummingbirds that can perceive some really complicated combinations of colors like ultraviolet and green together and all sorts of really weird things that we just can't even conceptualize. Like, I don't know what that would look like, but a hummingbird sees it.
How do we know what a bird can see?
It's a great question. There are ways that you can test birds behaviorally for this. So you can train them to respond to a certain pattern or something like that. And then you can make that pattern out of different colors and you can see, do they still see the pattern? And how similar do those colors have to be before they can no longer discern that there's a pattern there because they can't tell the colors apart. And in
Wow.
that way, you can test them behaviorally. There are also ways to test both hearing and vision a little bit. You can do some kind of neurobiological tests on it. So like, when they see certain colors, are the neurons in their brain firing or not? That's another way. That's a really common thing. Like that actually is what hearing tests are for a lot of babies, is they're testing brainstem response and whether or not the brain is firing when a sound goes in the ear. You can do something sort of similar with color sometimes too.
Wow. So much science is being conducted on birds. That's so cool.
To your point, though, we still don't know what they're actually seeing. Like, it's the age-old question, right? What I see as red, do you see as red? We can point to something red and say, yeah, that's red. But do I see it the way that you see it?
We won't know until we like share a consciousness.
Yeah, and we're never going to do that. And definitely, we know that we see it differently than a bird does, but we can't picture what they're seeing.
Yeah, we're not sharing a mind. So, okay, we can move on because we could get really in the weeds. But this one comes from Matt with 1T. How does an eagle see its prey from so far away? Do they see differently from birds like sparrows?
They do, yes. And they see very differently from us, from humans. So again, trying to imagine that you're an eagle and that you can see this, it's like, I always imagine it's kind of like looking through binoculars or something because eagles have much higher visual acuity than we do, which means that they can perceive really fine-scaled details at a much longer distance. And that's because they have a few things. Well, they have pretty large eyes for their body, first of all. And then in those eyes, on the retina, they have a really high density of those cones, photoreceptors and cones. And so they can see really well in color too, which is pretty cool at long distances. And they have a lot of brain space dedicated to processing everything they're seeing. So they're pretty good at when the information is coming in, making sense of it. So yeah, they do. They see better than us by a lot.
Wow, and that is why we say eagle eyes.
Yeah.
That was a two-part question from Matt with 1T. Do they see differently from birds like sparrows?
Yep. They have better visual, long distance visual acuity, as I've said, right? So they can see really well at long distances. But there's actually some debate recently. People think that maybe raptors don't see in the UV as well as some of the small birds. So sparrows are probably seeing all that UV coloration on birds that have it or on flowers or things like that. Raptors, some of them see it and some of them don't. So that's one difference. And then another difference that's kind of cool is that eagles and raptors, owls, hawks in general have their eyes set a little more to the front of their face. So they have binocular vision, right? You and I have binocular vision. When you look forward, you have an overlapping visual field of your two eyes. So part of what you're seeing with both eyes, which is why you're really good at depth perception in that area. And if you're a hunter, like an eagle, it's good to have that because you know exactly how far away the rabbit is and you can nail it really effectively. Sparrows don't have much binocular vision. A lot of the small birds that are prey have their eyes on the sides of their head and they can't really see anything in that overlapping visual field, but they have a very wide field of vision, so they can see a predator coming from all around. And their area of best visual acuity is to the side. They have a phobia that looks sort of sideways. So if you've ever seen a sparrow hop up to you and then it like tips its head and kind of points the side of its face at you, it's looking directly at you. It's weird because for them, that's where they see the best.
If we think of it as side eye and they think of it as like friendly eye contact.
Exactly.
Okay, this next one comes from Stephen with a V. I think it's only fair to mention the V since I mentioned Matt with 1T.
Yeah.
Do birds really use magnetic fields to navigate?
They definitely do. Yeah, they definitely do. We have evidence, lots of behavioral evidence showing that they can do it, but we don't know how. It's actually a great question. It's this big question in ornithology and bird biology is how do they do this? Like what inside the bird is causing them to be able to navigate based on magnetic fields? We know that when they see things, it's because light comes into their eye. And when they hear things, it's because sound comes into their ear. So those are organs that are there to sense the world around them. But there's no sense organ for magnetic fields, and yet they can sense them. So it's this really kind of cool mystery.
I'm not saying anything because I'm thinking about that. There, wait, let me repeat that back to you. I want to make sure I understand this. Like, we know how hearing works, we know how sight works, we know that they respond to a magnetic field. We don't know how. We do know why, right? We know why because that's how they get where they're going.
Yeah.
But we don't know
Yeah.
how they perceive the pull of, I guess, the Earth's magnetic field.
Yeah. And there are hypotheses. There are multiple different theories, and there's some evidence supporting a bunch of theories. So there's some evidence suggesting that there's something in their eye, some sensors in their eye they can detect magnetic fields with. There's some evidence that they need a particular nerve that goes from the brain to the front of the face, the trigeminal nerve, that if you disrupt that, that messes up their magnetic sense. And there's some evidence that in some birds, the inner ear, there are some structures in the inner ear that are associated with magnetic sense. But it's kind of all over the place, and people have not definitively said, yes, it's this one thing for sure. It might be that it's different in different birds, or it might be that all of these things are contributing, or maybe it's one or the other and we just haven't quite nailed it down yet.
Wow, wow, wow. Just so much.
There's also really funny stuff to do with the magnetic sensing that I feel like I should tell our viewers about, because the way that we know that birds sense magnetic fields is because we've done things to mess with them. So you can put them in a cage and create a magnetic field around them. And then you can see during migration season, naturally they try to fly one way. And then you turn on this giant electromagnetic coil or something and you switch the magnetic field and now they start trying to fly the other way. So it's clear that they respond to that. One of the best kind of hilarious research projects done on this back long ago, 60s or 70s, I forget which, put little hats on pigeons that had a tiny electromagnetic coil. And as long as they couldn't see the sun, because they do navigate with the sun as well, on cloudy days, when that electromagnetic coil switched the direction of the magnetic field right there on their head, they flew in the reverse direction from where they would normally fly.
Wow.
So yeah, scientists do some fun stuff. Once again, crazy things that scientists come up with in order to test their theories.
Our last question, minus any follow-up questions I reserve the right to ask, is from our viewer Phil. Phil asks, how long does it take a bird to make an egg?
So it depends on the bird, and there are multiple stages to egg making. Inside the bird in the ovary, they are growing kind of multiple follicles, eggs that get fertilized and then can grow and become what will be the yolk of an egg. And that process of growing that follicle into essentially a single giant cell, you know that as the yolk, that takes 4 to 6 days in a chicken, something like that. And then a chicken is continuously yolking up several of those follicles, and one time per day, one of those follicles will move into the oviduct. And as it moves down there, it gets added to, they put some membranes around the yolk, then they add the white, which is called albumin, but it's what you know as the white of the egg. And then it gets to the shell gland, and then that hard shell gets put on along with some pigments. That process of going through the oviduct to the shell and being laid, that takes a day. One day. So that's why chickens can lay an egg every day.
What determines whether it's laying an egg that you will perhaps crack over a frying pan or another baby chicken?
They're the same thing.
So you just have to let it, like, leave it alone?
If you have a flock of chickens with no rooster, you're definitely eating an unfertilized egg. But a lot
Okay.
of chickens are out there in flocks with a rooster. And if there's a rooster there, it's very possible that those eggs are fertilized. But if you collect it really early, right after it's laid, and you put it in the fridge and you stop it from developing, then no problem. You can eat a fertilized egg. It's no problem.
Okay, wait, so it's not true that if I didn't grab it and crack it, that it would become a chicken.
If you have no rooster, that's never going to become a chicken. Nope.
Right. Only if it's getting fertilized. Okay. And is it getting fertilized like the old-fashioned way through like some type of penetrative sex? I,
Yes.
I guess by old-fashioned, that was very presumptive of me. Old-fashioned from a heteronormative human perspective.
There we go. Because let me tell you, there are lots of animals that fertilize eggs in very non-human ways, all sorts of ways. Chickens have, remember, I think in an early episode we talked about this, right? They have a cloaca. They have one opening where everything goes out of it, right? So males and females both just have this hole, and in most birds, when they mate, it's called a cloacal kiss, where the male hole and the female hole just touch, and some sperm gets transferred shoop, right into the other. Um, there are some species, ducks and relatives, as well as some of your big, like ostrich type birds, do have penises and they have penetrative sex in that way. But chickens no, and most birds no. It's just this cloacal kiss. So if you ever see two birds where one is kind of standing on the back of the other really awkwardly and they wiggle around. And then you see the tail of one kind of go up and the other kind of goes around like that. Imagine these are bird tails. Choop, choop. Yeah, that's that's them mating,
Okay,
copulating.
now I have so many questions. Do they tend to mate a specific time of day, specific time of the month? And it seems to me just like whereas a human has a certain window where we may be fertile, like do they have a certain, if they're creating a new egg potentially day where the fertilization is optimum? Like how, what, tell me more.
They mate usually during the breeding season. So most birds have a breeding season, so they won't do this year round. And females won't be yolking up eggs year round. They'll do it just for that period where they're going to lay a bunch of eggs in a nest. Chickens are different because we have bred them to just continuously lay eggs. So normal wild birds don't lay an egg every single day of the year. So during the breeding season, they start doing that. Also, though, female birds can store sperm. So they could mate with a male and store that sperm for a while and continue to use it to fertilize eggs for pretty long time,
Eggs,
weeks after that copulation event took
plural
place.
eggs,
Yes, many eggs.
because the cloacal kiss may involve many.
Many individual sperm. Yes, plenty of sperm in there. Yep.
And also, as far as the cloacal kiss, as it were, are they like us in that they may have their own personal preferences about with whom and how and when they would like to mate? Or is it strictly like if it's available, it's happening? Like, how does that work?
Oh no, there are very strong preferences in a lot of birds. There's
Okay.
incredible mate choice processes that have developed. And so, in fact, if you think of some of the most elaborate behaviors of birds, like if you've ever seen blue-footed boobies doing their dance where their feet are going like this and they're showing their blue feet to each other and then they put their head up and down and they do all sorts of elaborate things, that whole ritual is thought to be a mate selection and mate bonding process. So they're really picky about who they're going to mate with. And, they have to put in the work to make sure that their partner is good and they're going to stay with him.
I respect that.
Mhm.
Um,
And there are some species that do some really amazing things to try and attract mates. I mean, I think the one that is the most obvious kind of extinction, the one that is the most obvious extension of who they are bowerbirds. In this species, males build these bowers, these amazing structures that look like little dwellings, like little huts. Sometimes it looks like a little alley carved out of the vegetation, and they decorate them with colored items. So they'll find the prettiest berries and flowers, and if they live near humans, the prettiest milk bottle caps and other brightly colored things. And those males just create this whole kind of scene for the females. Females show up and they choose their male who they're going to mate with based on this world he's created in his bower.
wow. Okay, and then I have to ask, and maybe this is irrelevant, but I feel like in light of like what's going on in the world right now, and again, I don't know the life cycle of a bird and when a bird hits like bird puberty or whatever, but like, are there a what I guess you could call it deviant birds that are engaging in sex acts with young birds?
Yes, there are examples. I would say the most well known of this are ducks. Ducks are really well known for being pretty aggressive. Male ducks, um, every now and then it happens that a group of male ducks trying to copulate with a female who is unwilling will kind of gather and attack her and sometimes even drown her in the process. So yeah, there's some really bad sexual
Damn.
behavior out there in the world. Ducks are one of these species, if you remember, that we said that has a penis. It has an intromittent organ. It's not just a cloacal kiss. So they, along with that, have gotten perhaps a little
Yeah,
more aggressive.
that doesn't sound like a kiss.
No, it's not a kiss. It's really not good. But again, we're not judging morality based on animals. Like we said last time, this is a thing that happens.
Speak for yourself. I am so suspicious of ducks. Okay, this
Here,
changes
well,
everything for me.
Here's an amazing fact about female ducks, and one of the ways that they have combated this is that over evolutionary time, because this is a problem, male ducks, male duck penises evert very quickly.
We don't know what evert for the listeners
It
who don't
means
know
it
what does evert
extends,
mean.
right? They really quickly go from being coiled up inside the body to like woof, And it can be, several feet long and they call it explosive eversion of a duck penis, very fast.
So they're just like a bunch of 13-year-old boys. Like the wind blows and
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But it's like way longer and it's coiled. Duck penises have this corkscrew shape to them.
okay.
Females, in order to slow down the movement, the rapid eversion of that within their bodies, have evolved a reproductive tract that is also coiled in the opposite direction. So it's like he's trying to corkscrew in and she's trying to stop him. And their bodies have evolved over long term to do this. It's this kind of sexually antagonistic co-evolution example. It's really crazy.
That is a beautiful example of justice.
Yeah.
Again, is it science or is it like a mystical hand letting the birds perhaps show us the way?
Yeah, I'm going to call it evolution. You call it mystical hand. Whatever we like to think about.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I'm not committing to anything. I don't know enough. I'm so blown away. Can you imagine all the lady ducks just being like, take back the pond?
Hmm.
Wow. How does this feel as an ending point for episode 8?
I feel like we've gotten a little like sidetracked in really interesting ways. So I hope that people have enjoyed that, right?
I hope so. It's given me a lot to think about for sure. Thank you so much for joining us for episode 8 of Bird Brain. This is a great stopping point, but definitely tune in next time because we are going to be talking about a topic that is sure to be of interest, bird sounds.
Yeah, this one is near and dear to my heart because most of my academic research is on the sounds that birds make, songs, calls, etc. So I'm really excited for this next topic.
Well, this has been super fun. Thank you for being here. And please don't forget to send your questions because we're pretty flexible. Like we have some questions mapped out for the next few episodes, but we are always open to more questions. Lauren, where should our audience send those questions?
You can send it to birdbrainqa@gmail.com. Check out our website, which is also birdbrainqa. And of course, you can watch all our videos on our YouTube channel.
And if you liked it, please give it a like, hit subscribe, tell a friend. That's how we spread the bird.
That's right. We're spreading the bird.
Spread the bird till next time.